All right, we are live. Good morning, Big Blue World. Hi, it's Britt Boles. I wanted to welcome you to a series called Blue Biographies. If you're just joining us for episode 6, this is a live interview series I've been doing here in the Facebook group, and it's a seed to story project. What that means is I'm interviewing people across the globe, indigo growers, dyers, and farmers, and we're hearing their stories with indigo. And today I have Casey Newman. Hi, Casey.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you so much, Casey, for being with me here today. I'm really excited to get to know you. I consider you one of my indigo neighbors, even though we've never met, but we're in the same state, and someday we'll meet in person. We'll settle for this for now. This is a great second best, but I really wanted to show my gratitude for you joining me today. I'm really excited to hear about your journey with indigo, your beautiful backdrop, your forest farm that you're in right now. So would you tell us a little bit about you, Casey, a little bit about Cedar Dell Forest Farm, and about your indigo that you grow?
Mm-hmm. Well, my background is in forest ecology, actually, and I have a master's degree in forest ecology and have spent lots of time in the woods studying furry little animals, and really went into the field of environmental education and teaching kids and families to love this beautiful natural world that surrounds us. Um, and I've always been a hobby, like knitter and spinner, and so learning more about natural dyes, a decade or so ago, it just really dovetailed with my general, work in nature, and felt like just a really beautiful melding of like the science brain and the art brain, and just colliding into this beautiful color world. And I started incorporating a lot of natural dye projects into my educational programs when I could. And eventually, a couple of years ago, we moved from the city where I had been working for a variety of like environmental nonprofits doing education, and really felt like I wanted nature right outside my door, and I also really wanted a space where I could curate my own programs and really blend the nature and the art and the fiber all together in this like, cloudy way that was kind of forming in my head. And so my family was on board with it, which was awesome. And so we moved not far. We're just outside the city of Portland. We're like 30 minutes away from where we lived before, but it feels like a whole different, it's a whole different lifestyle for the family. And the space that we have here, we have 4 acres of mostly forested space, but we're right up against 75 acres of public forest. So it kind of feels like we have 80 acres to ourselves, but we just don't really have to maintain most of it, which is nice.
Wow, yeah.
So, and there's a classroom space that I use for like dual purpose education programs in my studio and workshops. And so it's really been great to like move out of the kitchen and dining room table of my previous life, which makes the family pretty happy too. So we've been here 3 years, and it's been really 2 years of holding kids programs and dye workshops. And I mean, all of that is on pause right now, but that's, where the momentum was building to. And so it was, working for 20 years or so to teach people to like appreciate and learn about the space around them. Being able to grow my own dye plants and color really just fits with that mission really well too. To like we can do things ourselves, we can grow things ourselves. It's nice to buy things from other places, but we don't have to do amazing things.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that the forest really has always been calling you, and now you've made it your home. That's really beautiful. I also have been really excited to watch your journey with, especially teaching children, and doing that in the beautiful location, the space that you have. What a treat. And to be able to show them kind of the seed story, really, the seed to story source stories that are so beautiful and impactful as a child, to be able to watch something grow from seed. So I know that that'll happen again in the future for y'all, and I'm excited to bring my daughter to the Cedar Dell Forest Farm for her to learn from you. Would you tell us a little bit about the indigo that you're growing? What kind it is? When did you meet the plant? A little bit about that.
Yeah, I grow Japanese indigo here, and it really started in a kind of random encounter. I sell my work at a lot of art festivals, and I talk to so many people, and some are really interested in what I do and have lots of questions or have done it themselves. You know, others just stop in and look and walk out of my booth. And there must have been someone somewhere that mentioned growing indigo, and I probably replied with like, oh yeah, I'd love to. Because I got a random email from someone, 6 months later, who said, do you still want to grow it? Because I have seeds. And I couldn't recall the conversation,
Yeah.
or where I'd met her. But she, mailed me a bunch of seeds with really lengthy growing instructions, and
Oh, nice.
really lovely. And so I started some from seed, and then a few months later, she emailed again and said, I grew too many plants. I know I gave you seeds, but if you also want some stock. So that was kind of a fun thing to, have some established plants to work with the very first time growing it. And that was just last year. So this is just my second year growing it. And I have probably, 3 or 4 times as many plants this year as I did last year. It was like 15 to 20. And this year I have, 60 or so, which is really exciting. And I, cleared some space in the sunshine to make room for them.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I didn't really realize, the indigo would grow so well in this not super hot kind of climate, because you hear about, indigo from Asia and Africa and South America, where it's really sunny and warm, and we don't have that weather. But
Right.
yeah, it's just learning that there are so many different indigo-bearing plants, and there's kind of something for everybody.
Yeah, that is so exciting about the global really piece of growing indigo. It really does. I've heard of people growing it in cold houses in Norway, all the way down, to South America and the tip of Africa and Australia. So it really is a global opportunity for blue, which is so, so special. And I think it's so cool that you have like an indigo fairy godmother, is what I like to call it. I have one of those too, who introduced me to the plant and was so generous with information. I feel like that's another really cool piece about indigo. Indigo growers are very generous people. They're very willing to share information. So that must have had a really big impact on, you deciding to grow it and grow it again and grow more this year.
Mm-hmm. It did. Yeah, it was a really great experience last year, and having incorporated indigo dyeing into a lot of my youth programs for so long. And of course, I always tell the children that it comes from a plant, and isn't this amazing? And you get blue. But, and like they smile and nod and they're listening.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, well, let's get to the making something already, Miss Casey.
Right.
And last year, being able to sit them down, and we're 50 feet from the plants, and to hold one in my hand and say, this is the plant that makes this, and seeing that group of children, just like the way they were engaged in that conversation, made me realize that they really weren't getting it before in a way that you can when you see it and hold it and touch it, which is just the most lovely thing about teaching.
Yes. Oh, that's so exciting. And just to crush up a leaf and watch that magic, happen. It's for kids and adults alike. It's like this giddy feeling, right? So what's your flow now? We talked a little bit about what's going on with your plants, but will you tell us? It's such a...
my plants had a bumpy start, but I'm babying them along. They were really flourishing in their pots, and the weather was nice, and my 9-year-old was just like, when are we gonna plant them, Mama? When are we gonna plant them? And I said, well, okay, let's go do it. And rain was in the forecast, and I thought, well, that'll sprinkle on them and make them happy. And it just was torrential downpour, thunderstorms. that just beat these little plants into the ground and made it so easy for the slugs to come and nibble on them. So I, almost wanted to cry about it. But my kids started going out and helping me pick up, like, the slugs would just kind of mow them down and like leave some. So I have a few jars like this with the little plants, and they're all growing roots.
I love it.
The railing back here. So they'll be fine. And
They'll be fine, yeah.
We'll wait for this weird spring thunderstorm thing to be done.
Yeah.
Going back in the ground.
Perfect.
Really well in big pots too, which is, you don't need a giant field to.
Right. Yeah, that's so smart that you're saving all those little stems, because it's in that knotweed buckwheat family. It'll just root right out again. You'll have more plants.
They're so resilient.
They're so resilient.
Which is nice. I love growing things, but it's not like I have so many things I do to spend my time on. And gardening and growing things is not like my heart passion. So like things have to be like a little bit easy for me.
Sure, yes.
And so, it's not super fussy as long as the weather is nice and you harvest them before it freezes. And
right.
Yeah.
And so some of your other passions really relate to indigo. They're really connected. Will you tell us a little bit about your flock and your fiber animals that you have there at the forest farm?
Yeah, so when people say, like, how did you get to this spot? I say, well, I grew up on like this forested property by a creek in Northern California, and I was a 4-H kid, and I raised rabbits and market lambs. And here I am as an adult, dragged my family to the forest by a creek, and we've got our rabbits and sheep. So it's kind of, it's full circle. If you'd asked me as a teenager if that's what I was going to do, I'd been like, no way. Like, I go move to the city, and which I did for a while. But so I tell my 13-year-old that when she, complains about this lifestyle, like, just wait, you might be surprised up as an adult. But our fiber animals are really pets first and fiber growers second. We have Shetland sheep, which are just such a sweet little breed of sheep. And they come in so many colors, which is really fun. Most of ours are light colored because I do want to be able to dye the wool and use it. But we do have one little lamb this year who's really dark chocolatey brown, and we might keep her for fun.
Oh, beautiful. And how many sheep do you have now?
Well, we have 3 adult sheep and then the 2 twin lambs. We probably won't keep both of them. We don't have a lot of grazing space here because we are mostly forest.
Right.
But the Shetlands eat, they're a heritage breed, so they eat a lot more things than just grass. Like kind of the commercial sheep really just need their hay or pasture of grass. I mean, they'll eat blackberries, and they love maple branches and all kinds of weeds, which is awesome. So they're a pretty hardy little breed, and they're not very big sheep. So
almost like having a little goat, a little soft, fluffy goat.
And then we have just for now the one Angora rabbit who's just super friendly. He's like the most perfect bunny ambassador for all of our visiting children. He loves to be held and picked up, and he's like pretty much always molting, so it's always fun to like show how you can gently pluck his fur out and roll it up and make little fur balls of Angora fur.
Beautiful. So have you begun to use any of their wool yet, or is that in the future?
Yeah, I have not for my own personal use yet. I kind of get hung up on like, what's the perfect thing to like do or make with this like beautiful fleece from this animal who's like right out there and I love. So I haven't done any big projects yet, but I do. We've processed like small batches of it with some of the youth and family programs that I hold, and just done some basic hand carding with kids and teaching them how to use a drop spindle, and even some of my really short, like 3-hour standalone programs. Like kids can go home with like 3 feet of wool that they, carded and helped spin themselves, which is just kind of a fun thing to have to show that I made it. And
that's so special. And to be able to meet the animals and just the whole process, that's really, really, really special.
So, and then with summer camp programs, I do spring break and summer camp during non-pandemic time, which is really nice to have a whole week with kids to be able to really do some longer term projects. And,
yes. Oh, I'm really hoping that I can someday send Scarlett over.
Yeah. Lots of like solar dye projects, just go set up a bunch of jars and let the kids put stuff in and experiment with what happens. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's good for me too with kids to like break out of my my idea of like what I like and what I know works. Like with kids, like I want them to be successful and not disappointed by them, so I'll share with them like, here are some things you can gather in the forest that I know will make some color.
Right.
And then they usually respond with like, yeah, but I want to just try this other thing.
Right.
Which is, I wouldn't have spent my time, with something that I kind of think wouldn't work probably. But sometimes they really surprise me, and I've learned from their kind of random experiments with plants that might make a print or something.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good just a remembrance to come back to that open learning phase of being a kid where anything is possible, right? Anything is possible. And I do feel like that might be why I'm so drawn to indigo, because anything is possible when it comes to indigo. It's such an unpredictable, magical plant in a lot of ways. Just the fact that it's green and it gives blue, and nothing else does, just makes it such a really special plant to work with. So you have some of your plants in the ground, I know, and you'll have some in pots. You've got some rooting. I feel like you've got a really great, you've got little pots brewing everywhere, if you will. So it looks like it'll be a really exciting season. Will you do aqueous extraction again like you did last year?
Yeah, it's last year I did a lot of fresh leaf dyeing, which felt like a really accessible entry into dyeing something with the actual plants. And then I really wouldn't have tried the aqueous extraction if not for like this Facebook group and the wealth of
yay
information, and it really made me feel like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And my 9-year-old daughter got really interested in that whole process and doing that with me, which was really a fun and cool experience with her.
Yes.
And I just kind of panicked a little bit with it and like, trying to figure out like when it was quite ready. And then I had just this really giant Rubbermaid tub and trying to, estimate like how much water do I think I have in there? Because I'm not really going to like measure this and how much lime do I add. And so I ended up like thinking it wasn't doing what it was supposed to and just being like, I'll just dump in some more lime and that'll work. And
sure.
It did, but it's a pretty diluted pigment that I, came out with. And so just knowing that like the process works and I can trust the process, which is kind of the, metaphor for many things. And
yes. A life lesson.
Yeah. And, usually the fall is a really like end of summer and fall is a really busy season for me with transitioning from summer camp programs to the school year. And then like fall art festivals start really getting busy for me. So yeah, like it was important for me to do last year, but it felt like in one way, like this other task I had to squeeze into this really busy window of time. So in a way, like having to really slow down my own schedule this year and not having all of these events and things on my plate. I'm actually really looking forward to that in a way, to be able to like do some of these projects that take time and patience and really like settle into it and not rush to get it done before I have to go away for a week to do my thing.
Right.
So it's, trying to find the positives in this like slow home time.
the silver lining or the blue lining.
Right.
Yeah, that is a really beautiful opportunity for now. And I'm excited to hear about how it goes for you this year, because every year is so different. And just to collect the blues that you get over the seasons, it's like, I think of it like a vintner with wine. You have your 2019 vintage and then your 2020, and as the years go by, to be able to have those, there's always this, like you said earlier, this perfection kind of standard as an adult that we want this, but learning how to appreciate all of those up to that point. Sometimes I end up loving those like soft paley blues even more, just the sentimental value of knowing what you went through to get there, right? The learning journey, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting you say the wine thing, because I grew up in Napa and my dad worked in the wine industry, and
okay,
was one of those people who was always like, oh, let's have this wine from this year because it was really hot early on and that did this to the grapes. And I was always like, oh my God, Dad, like, how do you remember these things? Like, that's ridiculous. And now here I am, like, this crop of indigo will be like, oh, well, these are the plants that were stressed from the slugs and the rain when I put them in the ground. And
right.
Here was the ones where I harvested like really at the last second before it was gonna freeze. And so it's just like what I guess like the things that are important to you is what like helps make those connections with nature, which is and seasons, which is what I try to bring in with like my teaching too, is that like there are so many ways that we can connect to nature. And if it's through like drinking wine and knowing about the earth and the minerals and the flavor, like that's still a natural experience that you're having.
Right.
And mine is with color and plants, and other people might be with edible foods, or there's something for everybody, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, that is really beautiful. I love that story about your dad. And just the memory is so tangible when you're a part of the process. Mm-hmm. And so, picking a bottle of wine off of the shelf at a grocery store, still wonderful, but you don't have the story, right? And that story sometimes is more important than the flavor, mm-hmm. the outcome, right? Some people might taste that wine and go, but for him, it's like, oh, you don't understand what I went through. Yeah, and I feel the same way about indigo. Scarlett wants to say hello. She's making her first appearance in Blue Bios. This is my daughter, Scarlett Wren. Say hi. Hello. All right, can you go find Papa? That's really wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. So another question I wanted to ask you, which is really cool because I feel like the closer you are to the beginning of your journey, the more, sometimes the more you have to offer to people who are in your same position, meaning like first-time growers. So because you remember exactly what happened last year. So what, if any, advice would you give to someone who's on the indigo growing path this year?
I would say to just try it. Like, don't, I'm one who, before I start something, like I kind of want to know how I'm going to finish it.
Yeah.
And so this, if you've never like held the plant in your hand and then you start reading a book about all these different ways of extraction and fermented leaves, and it can feel really overwhelming, and like I don't think I want to deal with all that's too complicated.
Right.
But just like start with growing some plants, and it's there's some like mystery and magic feeling to it, but there's also a lot of information and people really willing to share their experiences. And, even if you just like shove some leaves in a bowl with some salt and mush it around, like you get color out of it. And it's not difficult, not to like belittle anyone's experience, but like I've had 6-year-olds do that and come out with a beautiful piece of silk fabric that they can like tie to a stick and wave around.
Yes.
So like, don't be scared about, massive amounts that people are producing. Right. And, like you don't have to even do an aqueous extraction and save your pigment. You can just dye with the fresh leaves.
Yes.
Ask a lot of questions and watch the videos. I like seeing, especially with like looking at how the color changes when it's fermenting. And I found your descriptions of how it smells to be like really fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, it's doable and it's accessible, and you don't have to. I'm not a master gardener by any means. And I can do it. So.
Yeah, I love that analogy of it. It really is as simple. A kid can do it. Yep, my 5-year-old loves to mash fresh leaves too. And I think that is the beauty of indigo. It is simultaneously the most accessible, easy plant to work with, and that it also has this very complex, mysterious chemical, really laborious side also. It really swings from both sides of the pendulum, right?
Layers of knowledge.
Yeah.
You don't have to like go to the deepest.
Right.
The very beginning. Like you can work your way to it. I love learning the chemistry around it. With my science background, like I'm a sucker for a good spreadsheet and a chemical equation.
Yeah.
And when I teach workshops, like I want people to understand a little bit about the chemistry of what's going on, because I feel like that really, it helps people's engagement in the process when they're doing it, and they kind of have an idea of why they're seeing color change and how that works. But I teach a lot of non-sciencey people, and it's not so complicated. That kind of the simple ideas are accessible and they're understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. The kiddie pool, I love that. You can go in the kiddie pool, the shallow end, or you can go all the way to the deep end, and it's endless. Right? Yeah, that's a great analogy. So kind of talking about the why. I love the why, the W questions. And so kind of will you tell us a little bit about the larger why? And you could answer this any way you want. It could be from an existential perspective, or what is your WY? Why you keep growing indigo? So why did you want to grow it again this year? What do you hope for the future of your indigo?
Yeah. The big reason for me is to be self-sustainable in my life here and in the dye work that I do. I'm never gonna grow a cactus where I can harvest cochineal from in my Northwest cloudy, rainy environment.
We wish.
Right. So like there are some things, if I want them, like there really is no option other than to purchase them from somewhere else, which I try to do from really sustainable places, and where I can feel good about my purchase and supporting folks who are doing really good work.
Yeah.
But being able to grow or gather a lot of my materials here is really important to me, a lot because of the storytelling that you say. I mean, as an environmental educator, like my first love really is the Pacific Northwest forest that I've been researching in and exploring in and teaching people about for so long. And this is just another way that I can bring nature to people. So, on the spectrum of personality, I fall more on the introvert side. But I really love the art festivals and having booths and selling my work to people, which is really exhausting for me. But it's also like full days of storytelling, and selling things online is, easy sometimes to have someone just like, PayPal me some money and I put something in a box and I mail it off. But I really miss that, like sharing people about, oh, this eco-printed piece is with, such and such leaves that were right outside my door, and here's the story of it, and just seeing people engage with my work in that way is something that doesn't really happen online very much. So growing things and collecting things and just really telling the story of place through my work is really important.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And when people hear that story, they connect with it in another way too. Yeah, that is really special about being able to share in person that I miss, but I'm so glad I get to do it here with you.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah. So we chat a little bit about this, but will you tell others what else is growing or what else you harvest? What's accessible to you there in the forest for dye plants? Sorry. other than indigo.
My vegetable garden, it's pretty boring. Is dye plants. The other one that I grow in the most abundance is goldenrod, solidago, which is a native plant here. And it grows in the mountains really close by, but to not have to get in my car and drive 20 minutes and collect it is really lovely. I don't have any here on my property, so I've planted a lot of that. It's just such a really color fast, local yellow, which is fun to teach people too, because a lot of people have seen it out on their hikes and don't know what it is, and now they can recognize that and know how to get color from it. I grow flowers, coreopsis, and marigolds, and dahlia flowers that I'll use sometimes with kids. It's not the most color fast yellow, but it's really fun to shove a bunch of flowers in a pot and out. And then I gather a lot of things. I do a lot of eco printing or botanical printing. And so using a lot of our native leaves for that is
beautiful. I love your prints.
Is that. Oh, and mushrooms and lichen. We have a couple types of lichen that I collect when the branches fall or the wind blows it down. And then Dyer's polypore mushrooms that we find quite a few on our property. Last year, every week, I teach a weekly class for homeschool kids. So every Thursday in non-pandemic times, I have my group of homeschool kids here, and we spend, several hours just out exploring in the forest. And they're a pretty self-sufficient group. And so I would, walk as far away from them as I felt comfortable, still keeping an eye on what they were doing, like looking for Dyer's polypore. And I didn't find any, which was frustrating to me. And then my husband went out and found 3 of them that were like 20 steps outside my range that I'd been going away from the kids. So I was like, I see it. I'm not here on my own. But so those are fun. I really love the mushrooms and lichen. It's really seasonal as far as, especially the mushrooms, like when they pop up and you can store them, but and it's, the color from them is really surprising sometimes. And, people are interested in mushrooms for their edible qualities, or just so a lot of folks don't know that there also are a lot that give color, which is really, really neat.
It's quite amazing. I'm just learning myself about all of the mushrooms. We have so many here in the Pacific Northwest. And I love what you said about your husband having my friend calls it the mushroom goggles. Like people who can just spot them, they just have mushroom goggles on. So you got to put on your mushroom goggles whenever you go out. But yeah, the amazing range, literally every color. Perhaps not in one particular location can you access every color of the rainbow, but I know that as a whole, they're out there. Yeah, there's a blue mushroom. There's one that makes purple, pink, orange, yellow, everything in between, which is so special to connect with another source, another natural source.
Yeah, and they take a little more effort to find than, going on a hike and coming across goldenrod or picking leaves from the trees. And so I tend to kind of like hoard them a little bit for my, own personal use, or it just makes it kind of a special thing, like this little gift from the woods.
Yeah, like a treasure hunt. Because it's not the same as cultivating a plant in rows, where it's easy to pick. So they are really, really special. I'm excited to learn more about that. And if anyone is listening and wants to know more about, are you a part of the Facebook group, the United, what is it called?
Mushroom and Lichen Dyers United.
Yes, that group is a wealth of information. Highly recommend joining that group just to see what's going on, even if you don't have mushrooms in a region where you live. It's really fascinating to learn about.
Yeah, and Alyssa Allen runs
Yes.
the group and her website, Mycopigments, and she's just one of those folks, a lot like you, Britt, where she's very free with her information and teaching, and really wants others to do it and do it successfully and in a really environmentally sustainable way.
Yeah, she's really generous.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ellis Allen's in the Seattle area. If anyone ever gets a chance to learn from her, she's a fabulous teacher too. Yeah, great. Well, you're gonna have a very colorful season. I know you are. So I feel like you've already kind of answered this question, but if you want to elaborate a little bit more about the impact that indigo has had on you and especially your teaching community. You talked about, the kids seeing the plant, connecting with the plant in person versus just hearing about stories about the plant. So different, such a big impact difference. But anything else that's impacted you about growing the plant now after having used just the powder for years?
It really feels like a full circle experience, and has really deepened my understanding of the plant and about what goes on to make this end product of vibrant blue.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for the plant and for all the different cultures who figured out how this works.
Right. Yeah.
It's really neat. I have a good friend who spent a lot of time in Central America after college and met someone in El Salvador and got married there. And I traveled to her wedding. And this was before I had done any dye work really at all of my own, but going to some of the Mayan ruins in El Salvador and seeing where they were fermenting indigo in these big vats. And
wow.
At the time, I had no idea what they were talking about. But being able to kind of go back to that in my memory a little bit and really just filling in this bulk of knowledge now from, not just having died from it, but grown from it. And just some of the really ancient history about it is amazing that we, still know so much about the first folks who were dying with it.
Yeah. That's incredibly full circle. I love that story. You saw the vats, some of those ancient ruins and those places that have such a deep, rich history of indigo growing, like a continuous thread of indigo growing, where we're kind of, in the Pacific Northwest, we don't have a continuous history with a plant that provides blue. Although we do have a mineral, Vivianite, that does provide a blue color that the indigenous peoples were using, for many years. But we don't have a blue indigo-bearing plant. So to go to a place that actually has a history, I imagine that's really impactful now in your experience growing the plant. That's really special. Yeah.
Just seeing other people's reaction to the plant itself has been really interesting. The kid interaction wasn't totally surprising to me, but even adults have really, I taught a 2-day indigo and botanical printing workshop in Central Oregon last fall. And my 12-year-old daughter went with me as my helper, which was really sweet. She's not interested in the plant. She's not interested in fermenting this smelly, gross stuff. But my older daughter is really, she's very mathematical and geometry, of the intricate shibori folding and things. It's really her interest. So it's neat that, there are different ways to approach your experience with the plant. And
right.
But she went with me, and at the last minute, I had a little cutting in a jar, and I said, "Oh, I'll bring this to show the folks in my workshop." And 3 hours of driving in the hot car. And then the first day of the workshop, I forgot it and I left it in the overly heated hotel room. And I told the folks in my workshop, like, oh, I brought this, I forgot it, I'll try to bring it tomorrow. And they were super interested in that idea. And it just was like this wilty, pathetic little thing. You know, by the time I brought it, I was like, I don't even think I should bring this, Saoirse. When she goes, no, my daughter says, she goes, you told him you would bring it, Mama, like you should bring it. And even this like really wimpy, wilty, like floppy thing, you know, everyone was really engaged and like seeing it and learning about it and how does this work. So there's really a lot of power in the plant to connect the whole experience.
Oh, wow. I love that she kept you honest. She's like, no, you said you were going to do it. You better bring it.
She's very black and white in her right and wrong. Mama.
Oh. Well, that's wonderful. I'm so glad you get to share that with her, and that, like you said, there is a way to connect with the plant no matter kind of what your learning style is. Yeah, those crisp, really neat mathematical folds are so satisfying, especially for someone who's really right brain and mathematical. And that's a great segue into, yes, and here's the plant. Very cool, very cool. So let's talk about some important resources to you. So who have you learned from? You mentioned your indigo fairy godmother, the person who gave you seeds and plants. And are there any other books or sources that you've learned from that you want to share with us?
I really like John Marshall's book, Singing the Blues, which before I grew it, and I found to be kind of overwhelming in its amount of information and various methods. And I think to really fully, at least for me, to fully appreciate the wealth of knowledge in that book, you kind of need the plant to go along with it.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just so comprehensive and full of pictures and really, really great information. You know, this Facebook group I find to be a really great resource, and people are really willing not just to share their information, but to share their own process and their like failures too, which is a really valuable learning experience. Yeah, you know, the other one I wrote down on my paper to try to think of things beforehand was the Alyssa Allen and the mycopigments for the mushroom dyeing that we already talked about.
Yeah, mycopigments. Will you spell that for everyone?
Yeah, it's MYCOPIGMENTS.
Yeah.
It comes from mycology, mushroom, study of mushrooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's wonderful. She's got all sorts of resources, and then she hosts a Facebook group, right, that you mentioned earlier, the Mushroom and Lichen Dyers United.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, or it could be Lichen and Mushroom Dyers United. But either way, if you type in those words, you'll find it.
It'll come up.
There's not too many other people using those words for a Facebook group. But yeah, it's wonderful to be able to connect with a local mycological society if you have one near you. They'll take you out on forages sometimes, and often they're looking for food. But if you're looking for dye, people will help you look for those mushrooms, which is really, really neato. So yeah, a really fun resource if you have mushrooms where you live. Yeah, and Singing the Blues, John Marshall, really kind of an indigo Bible of sorts on all these different methods. Really, really amazing. I don't think I'll ever be able to try all the methods in my one lifetime. So it's really impressive that he's done all of those. That's goals. Great. So I feel like you've told us already so many great indigo experiences and stories. Are there any others that you could share with us?
You know, I think my favorite part of this has been really working with my youngest daughter in it, because she so badly, you know, being the younger child, she so badly wants to be the expert, and she wants to be the assistant for programs I teach. And my, you know, older daughter, just by the nature of her age, like fits that role a little bit better. And like other kids see this 12 and 13-year-old as more of an assistant helper and see her authority more than, you know, an 8 and 9-year-old. but having Karis, my youngest daughter, like really be so involved in this process. I mean, last year she was the one out there like checking my big fermentation thing every day to see the smell and like reporting back to me. And Mama, I think you should really get on this right now, you know.
Awesome.
It's just been really, it's really just a fun thing, and fun for her to have something in the family and then, you know, my teaching kids programs that she can have some expertise on and share that with, which has been a really been a fun time of sharing that with her.
Yeah, that's so beautiful to be able to. I feel like the indigo fermentation process especially involves so many of your senses. You know, you're looking for signs, you're smelling signs, some smelly signs for sure. And even touching the leaves, seeing if they're slimy. It's such a tactile experience. So it makes sense that it would really appeal, you know, to a young kid. And watching the leaf change color, the water go from clear to this crazy blue color that my daughter called it mermaid water. You know, it's really fantastical. And I'm so glad that you get to share that with both of your daughters, but from different angles. Again, it's such a, just in your one little family, a wonderful way to see how each person is connecting, you know, with the plant from different ways, from different viewpoints. So I'm really excited to hear more about your journey this year and what you do with your indigo at the end of the season. So how do people find out more about what you do with fiber, with indigo, with your other fiber crafts in general?
Well, we named our little spot here in the woods Cedar Dell Forest Farm. We say that we're, you know, half forest and half farm, which kind of fits this like woods behind me. And if you can see on the other side of me, it's like a big open sunny field with sheep grazing. So we've got a little bit of both. Yeah, so Cedar Dell Forest Farm on like all the social media things. My branding for the products that I sell is Cedar Dell Designs. Okay. So there's a separate website for that. They link to each other. So if you find one, you find the other.
Perfect. And you're on Instagram, same thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Forest Farm on Instagram. I love Instagram. I'm really a visual picture person.
Me too.
That's my favorite spot, and probably the most like comprehensive, you know, kind of overview of all the different things that we do here.
Yeah, you get to see lots of pictures of her really adorable sheep. They have just the sweetest little faces. Those Shetland sheep have just these, like teddy bear faces almost, I think of when I see them.
Yeah, this is our first year with babies, and it's been really hard to not have other people here to share that with us, because the whole like, you know, the whole winter and having my homeschool kids here every week and seeing this pregnant sheep get bigger and bigger. And we're like, well, when you come back in the spring, you'll get to snuggle her babies. And then no, none of that's happening. So it's, that part feels kind of sad and frustrating. And, you know, growing this indigo and wondering, am I going to have people here to see it in the ground this season and experience that? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really, like you said, it's a time where you get to have a lot more slow down with the plant, a lot more slow process with your craft. And then the bittersweet part is that people might not be able to share in person that joy with you. But I'm so glad that you still get to, share your craft online, on here, through your website, through your shop. You have some beautiful items in there. And then maybe possibly you'll give away some of your cuttings. I love that indigo roots out so quickly because it's just the easiest plant to gift. Once it gets going, it just takes a couple of days to root out. And so I feel like that would be a great plant to just leave on people's doorsteps. A little indigo bombing the neighborhood, sharing the indigo joy so people can have some in their life this year. A lot of people are growing this year, so it's very exciting that everyone is going to be able to, and everyone, but a lot of people are going to be experiencing that magic at home. So I'm excited to see all the new people sharing. We have some people saying hello and that they're planting indigo today. So they're in solidarity with us planting indigo. And if anyone has any questions, you're totally welcome to ask them now. Casey can answer them live for you. You can also leave a comment and you can tag her name. She's tagged in this post, so she'll see it later if anyone wants to join in and share any experiences or any questions with Casey. And I also just want to end it. If you have anything that you want to show us, if you have anything nearby.
I grabbed a couple things.
Awesome. I was hoping so.
At the end of the growing season last year, I just pulled out all the remaining little spindly leaves that I hadn't harvested for the extraction earlier. And I did this giant ball of yarn.
Oh, beautiful.
I don't know if you can see. It's like a really minty green.
Yes. Yeah.
Some more this year and make it a little darker because the amount of leaves I had was pretty low for this giant ball of yarn I had.
And what method did you use for that?
This I did the ice water blender. And then I have this. I said my daughter really likes the folding and clamping and geometry. I really like the Nui shibori, the stitching, because I like drawing and it feels like drawing design. So this is what I did with my that I made with my, let's hold it the right way. This is my little rendition of the indigo plant.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. Oh, that's gorgeous. Yeah, I can even see the flower head and the leaves.
Yeah, I might add some little pink on it because the leaves and the flower heads don't look quite as different as I thought they might. But anyway, that's my little like meta.
That's beautiful
project.
Oh, I love that. And I love that it's so, full circle, the imagery with the plant that you grew, with pigment that you extracted. That's a really special piece.
A range of,
yeah.
And this is only 2 of like myriad shades of green.
Right. And so it's wool, and then what's the fiber?
It's cotton, just like a cotton muslin, nothing.
Beautiful. That's just beautiful. Yeah, and I love the different shades on each type of fiber too. It's so diverse depending on the fiber blend. And I just did a mini vat a couple of days ago using orange rind as my reducer and did a sampler of maybe 10 different kinds of fiber, and they're all just ever so subtly different. That's what I love about it. Just from the one plant, all those shades of blue. Really beautiful. Well, thank you again for sharing with us. This was so much fun, Casey, to have you here and for me to get to know you and hopefully to meet you in person someday. We're not that far away from each other.
For sure.
Yeah. Thank you again. And I'll make sure and put up links. I have a link to your website up already, and I have your Instagram. And then I'll make sure and go in, add especially those other links, like to Alyssa Allen's site, the mycopigment site. I think will be really interesting for a lot of folks to learn from. And thank you again. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. It's fun.
Yeah, and I'll talk to you soon. Be sure to keep us updated on your plants this season.
Will do.
All right. Thanks.